Recording with Mr. Rick Prado on Sunday, April 23rd, 2023 at 2:22 p.m. Eastern Time. You've come on here once before, I believe last fall, maybe last summer-ish. We discussed your book, Black Ops, which will be in the description. But more importantly, I am, as I've said before on the show, and as I'm finally starting to do, I want to compile all of the stories of interactions, obviously everything that's unclassified. Everyone I've contacted, it's like, I can't tell you what I did with Billy. And I'm like, just tell me any story and we'll put it on camera, even if it's we had a beer. So I'm trying to compile all those stories about the late Billy Waugh, who passed away earlier this year at 93, who is, I mean, the Babe Ruth of Special Forces, the Michael Jordan. He truly changed the game in the most literal sense of that. Um, but Mr. Prada, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rick Prado. I started life as a U.S. pararescueman in the Air Force, and I went on to be Chief of Operations at CIA's Counterterrorist Center. I'm a plank owner of the Bin Laden Task Force. We started in 1996. So good career, which is always enhanced by the fact that I met giants like Billy Waugh.
And as again, as I when I asked Baz and asked Dale, they're like, Tom, I can't legally tell you what I know about Billy. And I was like, tell me anything. Did he give you a pair of socks? So I don't even know if the stories I'm going to be getting are even real, which kind of makes it even better. But if it's just a charade, if I'm just putting together a total snow job that isn't real. But in terms of, because you did know him very well, and obviously we were praying for him when his health started to go down. And I do tell the story about how last fall the plan was I was gonna come down and visit you and meet him, and you told me to be on my best behavior because at 93 he would still kill me, and I said I don't doubt that, and I've told that story many a times. Could you maybe, in the time we have, tell some of the more meaningful interactions, not just in terms of accomplishment and badassery, but maybe in terms of ethical and moral weight or wisdom? What are some of your more notable uh, golden memories of Mr. Wall?
Well, I met Billy in real early 1990 in the Philippines. He was had started with the agency after his great career in special forces, legendary guy in special forces. Parachuted into North Vietnam, free fall Halo a couple of times. So real deal. If you read his book and some other books that support it, you're talking a guy that jumped nuke backpacks
Yeah.
at Area 51 practicing for the delivery of those kind of things. He was a team leader for that. But like you said, everybody has Billy Waugh war stories. So I won't. I'll let them tell those, especially if there's anybody that was near or there. Um, but one of the things that I loved about Billy was an incredible hero who was incredibly humble.
Mm.
Billy was never a braggart, very confident, very competitive. I loved everything about him. And like I said, one of my biggest badge of honors is the fact that he called me friend, and that to me meant the world. Um, yeah, it's tough talking about it because it is the hole's still there. We lost a great guy, but there's some levity and there's some things with Billy in no chronological order, but so this is about 3 years ago, I think it was 3 or 4, no, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So Billy calls me. I'm Cuban born, so he calls me up and he says, "Hey Rick, I'm going to Cuba." I said, "Why the hell are you going to Cuba?" Billy says, "I'm going to do a skydive." Now he's like 88 years old by then, right? And his legs are all shut up. And I said, "Billy, what are you talking about? You can't even land on your feet." Yeah, he goes, "Well, yeah, no, I'm doing this with another SF guy that we both know, and he's been contracted to do a demo skydive for the skydiving club there in Havana, and I'm going to land in the water, and he's going to land in the land." So I said, "Okay." So I have to go talk to my wife. My wife adores Billy. I mean, I send you a picture of
Mhm.
her Billy and Billy's wife. And I tell her, I said, you ain't gonna believe this. I tell her the story. She goes, you got to stop him. You can't let him do this. I said, Carmen, first of all, there's no stopping Billy Waugh.
Yeah.
But second, you got to understand the mentality. If Billy jumps into Cuba and he gets killed, the legend lives on.
Yeah.
If Billy goes to Cuba, jumps, and nothing happens, the legend lives on. So, at 88, that's the way to go. She could not, she just rolled her eyes and said, you guys are all crazy. But he did his jumped out of an Antonov. So out of a Russian airplane over communist Cuba. And there was a lady that jumped with him, and he kept making comments about how well proportioned she was. And sent me some great pictures of him with her. He was a real flirt. And but that's Billy. I mean, a firebrand. I mean, a guy that never accepted that his mission had ended.
Hmm.
I met Billy in 1990 in the Philippines, early on in the Philippines, and he was the head of surveillance and counter surveillance for the station for a while there. Those are TDY jobs anyway. And I had met him once or twice before, but that couple of months that he was there, we got to be good friends. And he used to come to the house, and that's where he met my wife. But Billy was already, a mature guy. He wasn't,
Sure.
he was no 30, 40-year-old kid. And he would run around the Das Marinas compound in Manila, Makati area, memorizing license plates that did not belong there at 5 o'clock in the morning before we would go to work. That was his first recon. Was he would run through the whole neighborhood
And memorize.
quite nice. And if he saw any car that he didn't recognize from before, he would memorize the license plates.
And for everybody listening, 1990, he would have been 60 because he was born in 1930.
Yeah, he was 60 years old.
Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a particular vignette that this friend of mine's going to help me telling you, but I'm not going to say his name. Maybe I won't. No. So Billy is very competitive, and he was a hell of a racquetball player. And we had this guy in the paramilitary guy. He was a ground branch guy, friend of ours, who was TDY there, and or actually he was PCS. Either way, anyway, he was there, and I talked to Billy, and he says, "Yeah, I'll play him. I'll play him in racquetball." We were setting the poor guy up. So he goes in there, and of course, he didn't know Billy. He'd heard of him, but he's a 60-year-old guy, and this guy's a strapping, I think he was 101st Airborne kind of guy. And he comes out about 30 minutes later. He's drenched in sweat. His racket is by the string dragging on the ground. He's shaking his head. And right behind him is Billy walking like nothing's happened with a big
Beaming.
grin of it. He looked at me and says, he pulverized me. I said, there you go. Now you've been pulverized by the legend. So even at 60, besides running around Las Marinas and everything else, he was actually that competitive at sports. Yeah.
It's really not just because sometimes a legend, sometimes the idea of a legend can almost start to inflate the person, not the individual, but the aura around them. It's like they say, don't meet your heroes, right? You're gonna meet your favorite artist or something. You're gonna realize he's just a guy. He might make your favorite songs, but he's just a guy. He seems to be one of the few cases where, I mean, it's all backed up. It's all real. Everything he did. I mean, when I read Annie Jacobson's Surprise Kill Vanish, I think I read it the year I started the podcast, so 2019. I thought Billy Waugh was like an amalgamation. I thought it was like a character she made and just put all these classified stories together. And then I found out he was real. And he seems to be one of the few cases that actually did the thing. I mean, truly, I mean, it's a meme at this point. The pictures of Billy Waugh in Iraq in 03 at 73 with like, I think we've all seen the picture with like a silenced MP5 and like sunglasses on that my grandpa would wear.
Yeah.
And
There's a cute story to that Afghanistan deployment.
okay.
So Billy, Kofor Black was our director at the Counterterrorist Center where 9/11 happened. And Kofor Black was also the chief of station in Khartoum when Billy was stomping around, capturing the Jackal. And and messing with bin Laden. So I was the chief of ops at the counterterrorist center at the time, and Hank Crumpton, I think it was there, or Ben Bunk, one of the two. There's somebody else in the room with us when Cofer called us in. He says, "You know that damn Billy Waugh just walked in here and demanded that I send him to Afghanistan."
Yeah.
And he goes, and I goes, so he goes, you know, he's 72 years old. I say, yeah. And he says, he had the gall to tell me that because he captured Carlos for me, that's how I made senior grade, that I owed him. He was talking to a 5-star general, right? Equivalent. And a dear friend of mine. Kofor is one of the best, if not the best boss I ever had in the agency. And to this day, we're good friends. I even brought him over to Blackwater myself afterwards. But so I told him pretty much what the same thing I told my wife. I said, you know, if Billy dies in Afghanistan, the legend is believable. If Billy comes back, the legend continues, you know. And so that was he was looking for counsel, and we all told him, said, yeah, let him go.
Yeah.
And amazing. Again, I'm 72 years old.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to think that I could still do that, but I don't really want to. You know, that was the
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
There's something to pick, and that too is in Annie Jacobson's book. Yeah, he like posted outside his office and like wouldn't go away. It's like the end of the day and he was going home and he was like, Billy, you got to get out of, like, he was like, I think he said like Billy was just like sitting in the hallway and he was like, go home. And he was like, no. And he was like, what are you doing? He's like, this isn't funny. Like, you're an old man. And he was basically like, I'm gonna sit here and get older. And he was like, fine, like I'll do it. Like a little kid pouting. Like, no, I want the candy. Like, go to bed. Like, I want the candy. Finally, your dad's just like, fuck it. Like, take the candy. Like, he looks at my mom like, oh, Trish, you won't shut up. Like, something like that. But what you just said though is, would you even want to? And it's what you just said about the going there in Afghanistan or going to Cuba. That idea itself, I think, is something to pick apart. Because again, like you can go into all the war stories, the Halo jumps, and Korea, Vietnam, Mac v. SOG, the Saddams. Like that's all well and good, and you can, and people have written books about it. But there's a deeper operating system that you can break apart, and it's the win-win scenario. I go out guns blazing. I die for my country. The legend lives on. I survive. The legend lives on. That kind of seems in itself something he truly, it wasn't a bluff. It wasn't a, sometimes I remember in college, you'd psych yourself up. You go talk to a hot girl at the bar and you'd be like, I don't even care. I don't even care if she says no. But deep down, you still care. When she says no, you're like, fuck. Billy actually didn't care if he died. He was gonna the only reason Billy wouldn't want to die is because it would mean he lost. But there was no overarching fear. And that seems to be something that he truly just did up until his last breath. And he just happened to stay alive for 93 years of it.
Yeah, you know, and the center, the epicenter of Billy Waugh is in what drove Billy Waugh, in my humble opinion, was the fact that he believed in what he was doing.
Hmm.
Billy went and tried to enlist in the military before he was of
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
gets arrested. You know the story, and because he felt the call of duty, and eventually he gets in and goes to Korea, comes back, gets into special forces, goes to MACV-SOG, and so on and so on and so on. Billy never lost his purpose, and one of the things that I worked with him on a lot was bringing him up to Fort Bragg. He used to go to Fort Bragg for every graduation of the officers when they got their berets, and the warrant officers when they got made there. And so those were regular speaking gigs, but we tried to get him up there every time we could get a nice gaggle of people, because that's what gave him purpose. He's already in his 80s. um, he's not going to be jumping out of airplanes, after the one in Cuba. And like I
Mhm.
said, that one was, that was just off the charts. And but he literally believed that as long as you have breath, you should be contributing to something higher than yourself. And that's what we all love about Billy. Billy was a silent leader. Billy did not pontificate about anything. He just demonstrated.
Hmm.
It was lead follower, get the fuck out of the way, kind of
Yeah.
leading, but that was Billy. And his reputation in SF to this day is golden. Um, his reputation in the agency was incredible.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who Billy Waugh was. I have gotten so many notes from people that I didn't even know knew Billy Waugh that were in the agency, but just, look, I never had the chance to meet him, but I've heard so much about him. I know you were, this is, it's just on and on. So I think that's everything you see on the outside is caused by that heartfelt debt of honor to this country, and do it while you're still breathing, and he did.
And I think you said that the amazing part is that I don't know if he confided in you, if it's something you read, just kind of off his body language, but he said he still hadn't felt that he had done enough.
Yeah, that was a conversation that we've had several times, I've used him as an example, and Wayne Fisk, which was my pararescue mentor. You show me a guy, a warrior that believes that he has done more than other people or that he's done enough, and he ain't real.
Hmm.
Guys like Billy Waugh, guys like Wayne Fisk, those kind of guys, that's their purpose in life. God put them on this earth to defeat evil and gave them all the tools necessary, the wiring necessary to do it. But at the same time, is the humble aspect of Billy. I'm wearing this shirt because of him.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I make sure that we all keep in mind, those of us who have been in this business, is that we walked in the shadows of giants. Cofer Black, Dewey Claridge, Billy Waugh. If that doesn't make somebody in the agency humble, nothing does. Because these people are bigger than life individuals, and they're just specially wired for what they do.
Do you think it's only possible to, and I suppose this would require an examination of warriors over all ages, but is it only possible to have someone give that 111% if they truly believe that the thing behind them is a greater creation than themselves? I think it was not the comedian George Carlin, Dan Carlin. He has a great 6-part series on World War I called Blueprints for Armageddon, and he's reading a transcript from something from like the mid 1920s. So it's like a couple years after World War One, and it's somebody saying that World War One could never happen again because the only reason they endured the trenches is because of, and then they list memories. It's sitting on grandpa's leg at Christmas in whatever Berlin. It's walks near the Riviera in whatever Paris. It's the entire thing is they weren't fighting because they wanted to walk into the hellscape that is World War One. They're fighting for the idyllic thing behind them, and that's why it can't happen again. And the whole logic is because World War One destroyed those things, and obviously we went into World War Two. But do you think that's part of it, if not all of it? There has to be a golden city behind you.
I do believe that, like I said, these are folks that are wired differently than the average individual. And you got to understand, when you are a military person of any ilk, you're 2% of the population at the moment if you're serving. 2%. So if you make it to special forces, special operations forces writ large, okay, so Green Berets, Raiders, Green SEAL team guys, pararescue, combat controllers, if you're part of that, you're 1% of a 2% of the population. That's not even halfway. That's us, average guys. Imagine when you have a guy like Billy Waugh, like Wayne Fisk, like several others that we've had, Sing Lau, all these individuals that we've had, that they are legends within that 1% of 2% of the goddamn population. It's just they are giants. They are literally individuals that, in the beauty of them, they're all humble.
Hmm.
because there are very few of these people. I have never seen it. I have never met one that was constant braggadocio about what they had done. I know more about Billy's stories from his friends than I know from Billy.
Wow.
And like I said, I've known him for 30 some years and we've had 50,000 conversations. And he's not the kind of guy that tells you, well, there are Waughs. And no, no, he'll tell you about, Camacho and some of the other guys that he's written about. And, there's that big, huge humble factor for him there. And he is so well thought out in the community. I'll show you this. I got this couple of days ago
Special
from
operations forces run
yeah. They actually minted a coin
for
with his
Billy.
image on there and his name. So yeah, the real deal.
When it almost comes down to that philosophical dilemma of, I don't know, who's probably some philosopher said, Aristotle, whatever. Like the man that thinks he knows nothing, and the man that knows he knows nothing is the person that knows everything. And it's this dilemma
Yeah.
of, this is episode 1196. I'm less confident now in my ability to do podcasting than I was 1,000 episodes ago. I realize that I don't understand a thing I'm talking about. I talked to individuals like you or doctors, and it really settles in that I have no idea what's going on in this world. Like the grasp I thought I had on this. I'm born in 1990 and I went to Catholic school, and Republicans and Democrats and football, and then I talk to people who are like fleeing genocide in Africa, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Or having on an economist, and I'm like, but my high school teacher, and they look at you like you're an idiot. And the farther I get into this, the more I realize I don't know a thing about the world. And that, I guess, increases humility. Do you think it's that these guys have gone through so many things where I would imagine, they know they're talented. They might not say it through humility, but they have, I would imagine they have some conscious grasp of the role of luck in it. And that might play into humility.
Yeah, I think at least in my case and a couple of other people that I know, Billy being one of them, we believe we were put on this earth to do what we ended up doing. And of course, I don't compare myself with Billy in any shadow because I mean, forget it. There's no competing with him. He is a guy that really has always believed in doing, not talking about it, not teaching it so much. He was a doer. He didn't stay. He could have stayed longer in SF if he wanted to. They would have never let him go, but he didn't want to get into training and any other. He wanted to go back to action, and it took him a while to get into the agency. It took him a few years, but once he managed that, I mean, one of Billy's biggest job was that surveillance capability. He was extremely smart,
Hmm.
extremely aware kind of individual. He had incredible instincts, besides the courage and everything else. And imagine that your job is going from country to country, doing undetectable surveillance on your operations officers to make sure that they're not being ambushed or they're not going to be surprised or things like that, day in and day out. And we don't use these guys in Paris. Okay. We're talking Khartoum. We're
Yeah.
talking Manila. We're talking Yemen. We're talking
Hellholes.
yeah, hellholes. And where people get, Billy used to jog in Khartoum. Nobody jogs in Khartoum. First of all, the quality of the air, it's got the highest fecal matter of any country in the world, right? And he used to run around Khartoum. And and when I asked him, I said, how'd you get away with that? You're tragically white
Yeah.
in a 99% black
Tragically white.
country. And he says, Rick, says, they just look at you like, look at that crazy white guy running around the street. It was like,
That's it.
after 47th time they see you.
There's,
But that's how he made book. That's how he kept tabs on Bin Laden. He would literally go running around his compound every day, different times. He had created a hide in a nearby building that's the first photographs the agency got from Bin Laden that weren't from the Saudis or whatever, that it was ours. was Billy, and he tells the story when we discuss things like, what would have happened if they would have allowed us to neutralize bin Laden in the mid 1990s. What would have been the outcome? The coal probably wouldn't have happened. The bombing of our twin embassies in Africa, and maybe even 9/11.
9/11.
So and Billy says, it's just Rick. He says, I was so close to him, I could have killed him with a rock. And you sit there and you go, he meant it. I mean, he wasn't bragging. He
Yeah, that
says,
wasn't bullshit. He was within physical proximity. He could have killed him with a rock.
he says, I could have killed him with a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't yeah, this isn't some
Not
bullshit.
hyperbole. No.
This isn't some bullshit where I went to it's like going to, I vaguely remember going to like Fenway Park in Boston with my family in '04. And it's like grew up in New England, so you're watching the Red Sox and you see these guys you always see on TV, and you're like, I could reach out and touch, but they're 600 feet from you. No,
Yeah.
Billy was actually within proximity to kill this man.
Yeah.
That wasn't, yeah. No, Annie Jacobson talks about, yeah, and you wear prosthetics. He was so white that they had them, the agency had to make him like black prosthetics and stuff just so he could not totally glow like me. If you could go into his mind, just go in subjectively and like hear the inner consciousness stream. Do you think, and this is entirely, you know, speculation that could never be proven. Do you think a guy like that feels fear? Because if he doesn't feel fear, you almost don't want to say he doesn't feel fear. I feel like because right, you can't be brave if you don't feel fear. Do you think a guy like that felt fear? Do you think it was just a different animal? Do you think he was so laser focused it was almost like a religious experience? What do you think a mind like that is?
And with the guys that I've worked with, and my own experiences, and of course with Billy, um, you may get apprehensive before doing something, but once that, I think that the thing that a warrior develops is a switch, like the old TVs of the 60s, that
Turn
you could
on.
click it to a different channel. And that's where you can have a guy as pleasant and charming as Billy Waugh, who had my wife eating out of his hand because he's such a charmer's, Texas boy. And then all of a sudden go click click, and now he's going to kill you with a pencil.
Yeah.
It's once you get into the action, um, those who survive are those that are there to get the mission done, and they have that, like you said, that laser focus on what's the moment. But I go back to what I said earlier, you have to believe in what you do.
Yeah.
If you're doing it for any ulterior motives, you will have a hesitation. But if you honestly believe that you are in this jungle in Vietnam going after that general, that if I kill him, it's going to save American lives, I'm going to make a difference that very few people other can, and embrace the suck.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, and then you almost get into the idea of yeah, and I've been lucky enough to hang out with Dale Comstock and Joe Tedai. Once I got to go shooting with them. They're both former Ground Branch guys. Yeah, oh no, they're the most charming shit-eating bastards. And but like it's almost like if you're like playing with a cat and then all of a sudden you put your hand under a blanket and move it around and their eyes go black. I always joked about like when I was with Dale, I always joke, I'm like, I wanted to see if I could get the eyes to go black. Like what would happen if I, came up behind him and grabbed him or something? Would he kill me?
You
That
probably get hurt.
would have been a great story. Would have absolutely killed me.
You would have paid the price. Yeah.
100% I would not be here right now. But I think that's probably what it is well, they describe it apprehension going into a mission sometimes because they're human. They're like you can't not every once in a while. I think Dale would say like the gravity hits you that you're in you're somewhere where even the agency denies you exist and you're using weapons that aren't American. You're covered in cash that isn't yours, and no one's there. No one knows you're there. And he goes, it's hard not to. Oh, your stomach starts rolling. But I think he said like the metaphorical, I guess the game starts, the game whistle starts, and it's just like silence, like you're there, and it's when it's over. He was like, you can get nervous after it. It can be over, everything goes well, you're back home, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god. But I think that's probably what it is. It's just it's a game time. It's a different frequency.
I've seen movies where the guys are in near-death situations and they're thinking about their wives and their kids. I will tell you that that's not really the case. When the shit's going on, the only thing you're looking at is the shit.
Yeah.
Only thing you're worried about is the shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, before going there, you may be looking at a
Sure.
photograph of the kids. And when you come back with the adrenaline shakes, look at that
Yeah.
photo again and kiss it. But when the game is on, they're not thinking about
Yeah.
mothers, dogs, pets, wives, kids. You cannot afford to. You have to be in the moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now Dale said that before. I've heard that story from Dale and from Joe Teta. Yeah, they don't mention any of that bullshit. They're like, no, time slows down, and you just kind of like it's silent, and you just see like footsteps and like every individual sound. There's none of that romantic kind of horseshit. Back to the idea of believing in what's behind you and believing in your mission. There's almost a natural feedback system in that a society will only continue. Obviously, there's inertia, right? You can work out and diet every day and then stop working out and dieting. It's going to take a couple months to start to get flabby. There's an inertia. So with a nation, it might take years or decades, but a society can maybe almost only continue to thrive if it truly is good and just and something that's a cut above the rest. Because when you're in this shit, you could have enlisted people, you could conscript soldiers, but you're only going to produce a Billy Waugh if it's truly the shining city on the hill. If a nation starts to decline, it will it will not produce those people who are willing to go that last 1%.
there's a saying that hard times make
Mm-hmm.
hard men make
Good times.
soft times make soft men, and
Yeah.
so that always comes to mind. But I believe that guys like Billy understand that the day you stop trying to be better all around, and this is in the macro to the micro, it goes the same for a country. We're far from perfect.
Sure.
We're not building walls to keep people inside this country. People
No.
still want to come here because it's still better than the average humanity out there. But as a person, as a husband, as a wife, as a son, as an American patriot, I am pretty sure that that individual is always thinking, I have to do better. I
Hmm.
could have done better. I have to continue to improve, whether it's physical fitness, go shooting more often, learning another language better, whatever it is that it's a requirement for you to have your mission. Guys that are wired like Billy, I wasn't kidding when I told you. I mean, if you pissed off Billy at 92, he would hit you over the head with that cane. There's no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind that he would hit you over the head with a cane severely, you
Yeah.
know. And he might throw his shoulder out and he might throw his knee out, but you'd be out,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing. And it's just always being in the game for him, especially as he got older, where he knew that he was not going to go to Afghanistan at 88. Um, he was still active, he was still engaged, he was still passing on his wisdom to the students at Fort Bragg. Um, so yeah, I think that's what drives individuals like Billy.
And then I'm always I'm always torn. I'm 32 now, and part of it's just becoming you're just growing up, and you're realizing it's not all happy go lucky when like you're a kid. And I see the flaws in the United States, but I always hear there's kind of just these shit eating people in my generation say like, oh, the only reason you love because I mean, if it doesn't give away, I'm very shamelessly I love this country, and people will say the more time you spend outside of this country, the less you love it. And all right, fair enough. That's I've never spent considerable time in another country. But if you walk that logic out, then the people who love this, who hate this country the most, should be people who spend the least amount of time in it, right? Because you realize everything else is theoretically better. But the friends I have who grew up in Bulgaria and Kosovo, are the friends I knew who drag their balls over glass to get green cards and become citizens. So as much as it's easy to look at where we are and see flaws in it, the fact that, and again, it's back to biology, it's the membrane, the equilibrium, the gradient. We're not keeping people in. There are no walls. This is no East Berlin. We're not keeping people in here. There's no surveillance videos. Remember in North Korea a couple of years ago when that guy grabbed the van and like defected? He got shot a couple times, but he gave it all because he was like anything. And then he went to like South Korea and they were pulling like foot-long tapeworms out of him. It was anything to get out of that shithole. And this is, I guess this really doesn't even have anything to do with Billy Waugh. This is just me asking you. Is it a natural part of getting older? And you, I don't know, it's, probably funny me saying getting older at 32. You look at me and you're like, you shithead. But even now, just, yeah, I'm 32, not 22. Is that part of it where you get older? No, it's not perfect, but it's worth fighting for because it's the least imperfect place. And that's something I truly believe with all my heart. I wouldn't give a shit to do an interview like this if it's not something that truly meant something to. I get nothing out of this. You're not getting anything out of this. It's something that I truly believe in.
You're spot on with that. I have spent a lot of time overseas. Okay. And I guarantee you that there's certain things we got going for us. Okay.
Yeah.
People may envy us. It's human nature. They have it so good. They're so powerful. I always remind people that when people say that the United States is an imperialist a nation, I said, name me what land did we gain after World War II?
Yeah.
What terrain did we gain?
Yeah. What do we
Only
see?
the cemeteries where our warriors are buried. That's the only real estate we got out of this. So what you have is a lot of people, when they speak, they talk about, well, the United States this, the United States that. But we're still the envy of that's where people want to come. People want to come to the United States to be part of that. As you know, I'm Cuban born. I came to the country when I was 10 years old by myself. And when my father finally got out, 8 or 9 months later, called me back from the orphanage. I don't think he'd been in this country 6 months when he looked at me and says, we're not going back. Most Cubans that left during that period came to the United States for safe haven. But the greater majority wanted to go back to their country. Well, there were people like my dad that go in, I ain't leaving this.
I ain't fucking leaving here.
I don't give a crap how good Cuba was before Castro. I ain't leaving this.
Getting out of here.
This is where I'm staying. And it's funny, and it's apropos because Billy was also a hell of a CIA guy.
Yeah.
Billy could recruit, Billy could do anything. But one advantage that the agency has is that we are seen by subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously, we are seen as the guys with the white hats when it comes to stopping the evil stuff. There isn't a country that can singularly stand up to communism, socialism, terrorism, anarchism, radicalism, any of the isms. We are always the tip of the spear. I love our Brit allies, our Australian allies, our Polish, and so on, so on, so on. But at the end of the day, the average person, so the communist bloc intelligence services, they recruit as much for weaknesses as they do strengths. They may, strengths being you're ideologically compatible with communism, which says you're a moron. But, yeah, I'm prejudiced on that.
Yeah, no, it means you're brain dead.
So
100 million dead, but we're going to do it right.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. There's people starving in Venezuela, even though the oil comes out of the ground for a reason. But at the end of the day, that's the driving force there. It's when we approach somebody to recruit them to help us right a wrong or fight an enemy in their country, if they're believers, they look at us as the only hope, and that allows us to recruit primarily for strengths. And that's a huge deal. That's very esoteric and very specific for my agency. But I think it works the same thing with DEA guys when they're working overseas. Anybody who's in a country that's drug ridden and is honestly trying to do something about it will gravitate towards the DEA and become, a partner with them because they see them as viable. They see them as that stalwart, uncorruptible when it comes to this kind of stuff. So,
you ever watch those? This is a bit of an odd take, but I'm an odd guy. Have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where it's like, I don't know, it's like the idea of being like starting from literally scratch and trying to build something. It'll be like a guy being like, I'm gonna build a hot tub. And he's like in the woods. He literally starts with like, I'm gonna clear the twigs, clear the leaves. All right, I gotta start digging. So he goes and finds a rock and breaks it into a shovel, and then he starts digging, and then he goes and gets mud and makes a pot, leaves it out in the sun, and it dries. And now he has a pot. So truly starts from scratch. Like you're just naked in the woods. Can you make a hot tub? And he'll do these time lapses, and they're like 30 hours, and he's basically builds these things out of mud and some of them are incredible. He'll build like infinity pools and stuff, and they're great. That is, and maybe it's a flaw, I don't know, but that's how I view everyday life. Like that's so whereas someone might say, the life isn't great, America sucks. I'm in a 2 bedroom apartment. Like I view this as I would a naked person in the woods. I'm not even kidding, and I think it's one of the things I'm most grateful to God for is my ability to look at like a door frame and be like, that is a perfectly like symmetrical door frame. The door shuts. I've got ice water right here in a thermos. I could not in a million years make a metal thermos. I'd die an old man still trying to do that. I took a shower before this. I shaved. I don't know where those blades came from. My bed is made. I don't even know how you would build a dishwasher. I don't even know. I can barely turn on the washing machine. My point is, and let alone this computer. I mean, this is magic. I view every day paved roads, windows. I went to the gym and I wasn't attacked by a neighboring warlord. That's how I view everyday society. And I'm eternally grateful for that. And so, from that mindset, when I view something like the United States, it's not perfect. But in the grand scheme of human history, from beating tigers to death with a rock to now, where have you ever found a place that not perfect and not always 100% protects the liberties of the individual? Is and not only that, but where would that society arise? What are the chances that that society arises on a continent separated by 2 oceans with 2 mountain ranges on either side and a bunch of resources in the middle? I guess I look at that and I'm so with the same gratefulness a caveman who found an already sharpened rock and it's like, oh my God, I hit the lottery. That's how I view the United States is from like ancient Egypt to medieval warlords and barbarians and plagues. I'm like, everything has just been such total shit for all of history. And we have this little haven. And although I was born into an upwardly mobile, loving nuclear family and not in Cuba like you, I still view it like I'm your dad. And I'm like, I'm not leaving here. I rolled double sixes, man. Like we're on the money. That's how I view the United States. And that's why, and I know most people, oh, you've never left the United States. You're just a bootlicker. No, I genuinely love this place because I've read enough books to know that the vast majority of human history has been abject misery and pain and rape and beheadings. That's why I'm so grateful for this. And I think that's maybe I'm tying it into a circle. I think that's why I'm so motivated to do these interviews for Mr. Watt because I, I feel like I have a somewhat decent grasp on just how rare this country is. I don't really know where I was going with that, but thanks for sitting through
no,
that.
but you're right. There's the biggest problem we have in this country, and I've had that conversation with Billy. That's why it came up, is that we don't know how good we have it. The average American worries about what we call first world problems.
Yeah.
My iPad won't work. I have no reception.
It's not charging.
It's not charged. I mean, it is kind of amazing the mentality. And I again in conversations I would say things like, look, if I was king for a day, if I was king for a day, you could not go to college. You could not graduate high school until you did 90 days somewhere in a shithole.
Mm.
It could be some of the shitholes we have in the United States. We do have places that could use, but no iPad, no phone. You boil your water, you take a shower, you bathe in the river. You're doing things for AID and or the
Yeah.
one of these NGOs out
Hmm.
there. Something. It doesn't have to be just the military. It's a matter of going out in service on behalf of the United States and seeing the difference, feeling the difference. The average American that travels, they don't go to the center of Mexico. They go to Cancun. They go to, Mexico City. And if they're big businessmen, they'll have a armored car, pick them up at
Uh-huh.
the airport. And then they go to a 5-star restaurant. I mean, I've been to some of the best restaurants I've been is in Mexico City. But, again, you come out of that door, you go like, who's going to shoot me?
Yeah.
Constantly, and the poverty thing. When my oldest son, who was 7 or so at the time, we came back from the Philippines, came back to the States for about a year and a half. We went to church, and I handed him the envelope, like I always have, and he goes, "What's this for?" And I go, "Alex, it's for the poor people." He goes, "There's no poor people here." We were in Fairfax, Virginia. There were more Mercedes and Volvos in the parking lot.
Hmm.
He just came from a country that when we would walk out of church, there was a line from here to 300 yards of moms holding babies, and each one of them had some defect
Yeah.
or some broken or some illness. And that's what he saw every Sunday when we went, or when we drove in the streets, you know. So it's there's a difference between visiting the capital, going to Paris, seeing the Eiffel Tower, having some espressos, blah 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 blah. It's different being in Paris and trying to go to their DMV, or try to imagine going to the Italian, my favorite country in Europe. Don't get me wrong, I love Italy, but it's a nightmare, and compared to how we have it here. So we just don't understand how good we have it. And guys like Billy do, and guys like Billy do something about it. And I think that
Mm.
that's the combination there. That's
Yeah, I
really cool.
remember I remember my friends went somewhere in the Caribbean our senior year of college, 2013, so about a decade ago. And I had a couple, I love them, but I mean just shit eating liberal friends who were like, that place was so great. Like, I don't know why everyone thinks America's the best. And then another friend of mine who's a doctor, who very conservative guy, is like, yeah, you dipshits, none of you addressed the fact that at the front door of the lobby was a guy in all black with a banana clip, making sure no one came in there. He's like, we weren't in the Caribbean. We were in a little American hotel protected by American security services. And you got to look out on the Caribbean and say, look at this place. But you were protected by a guy who was going to put a bullet in anyone's head so that the white kids wouldn't get hurt, because that means business would go away forever. And my buddy Princey from Kosovo, I remember he and I worked security at a bar in Ocean City, Maryland in summer 2014. And he would work like 12-hour shifts. And then when I would go home and sleep, he would go to another place and work like an 8-hour shift. But I remember I used to give him like a sandwich or something, because my mom, yeah, 24, my mom was like packing my lunches. I would just give him a sandwich. And I always thought he was like fucking with me, because he would always like grab me and look me in the eyes and he'd say like, my brother. And I'd be like, dude, I just gave you an apple. Like, whatever. And finally, we got off work early one day and he was going to go back to his like shitty hotel. And I was like, dude, just come over. Like, let's go watch the World Cup at like my parents' place. And he was like, okay, okay. And I brought him back. And the same way that I would take goofy pictures if I ever went to like, I don't know, the king of Saudi Arabia's palace, I'd be taking selfies in front of the gold Bentleys.
Right.
I remember Prince told me, he like gave me his phone. He's like, take a picture of me. And he like threw up the peace signs. And it was in front of like my parents' like, okay, house. And I was like, this is weird. And then he had me do it again, and he opened the refrigerator, both doors, and he like did another piece, and he put it on Instagram. And all of his friends back home are commenting that our garage had 2 cars in it. Mind you, Honda Civics, 2 cars, and the refrigerator was full of food. And he was just like, I've made it. And that has always burned into my mind, that I was like, let's go home. And he was so, my dad made him like a turkey burger. And Prince was like, he was just like, you are my brother. It's been 9 years. And Prince still reaches out to me and he's like, you are my he moved to the United States, became a physical therapist, lives in like Manhattan now, has a hot wife, has kids. Like he's living the life. And I always try to remind myself of that. That's a guy that, I mean, was taking pictures and sending him home because our refrigerator had both deli meat and milk. That has never even as a joke crossed my mind. And that is I mean, I'll never apologize for loving this place. And I know that's not popular in my generation because they're a bunch of shit-eating communists, but I guess I don't know. I feel like I know what this place is. And maybe I'm who knows, maybe I'm ignorant, maybe I'm self-absorbed, but just full circle in the last couple minutes that I have you. So I always, and this is, I guess I'm just going to use you as my therapist now. I always feel like when I interview guys like you or Dale or Ted or whoever, I always feel like a total pussy that I never served. I'm 32. I got into medical school, decided not to go, and now I do this podcast. But I also feel like because I'm Irish and have the gift of gab and have the ability to talk to people, and I'd like to think I'm somewhat intelligent, I feel like this is probably where I can do the most good is in front of a camera. What would be your advice to someone like me, someone who still believes in America, someone who still genuinely wants to do the right thing? What do I do? How do I go about this?
Everybody has a responsibility to make this place a better place. Like I said, the moment you stop trying to grow in any case, intellectually, physically, or anything else, you start to move backwards. Okay. Um, but not everybody's wired for the same thing. I believe that God actually puts the right person in the right choices of paths because he does give us choices. If you are willing to pay the price of admission to do what you feel that you were put on this earth to do, then you're going to have a very nice trip. No matter how many rocks you stumble over, how many cliffs you got to climb, how many rivers you have to forge, because it's your path.
Okay.
It is the path that you chose to take that the good Lord put in front of you. The difference too is I truly believe that in my case and in the case of Billy, God forged the metal in us as we go along. And again, no comparison between me and Billy is being made here. Billy came from a very, modest family. His mom raised him. She was very smart, but he had to, work and try to walk to another town to enlist. All these trials and tribulations and getting lit up like a Christmas tree in Vietnam and almost being booted out of the military and him coming back. Those are just builders and builders and builders that after a while, that's what everything is to you is build forward, keep moving, keep pushing. Uh, you believe in what you're doing. You believe in what you're doing. You look at the Ukrainian war with Russia, the defection rates of Russians, besides the body bags, are substantial. You don't see that from the Ukrainian side.
Hmm.
They're fighting for their freedom. They're fighting for their families. Guys on the Russian side, they're fighting for Putin because it's making them be there.
Yeah. Yeah. You take a step backwards, you're gonna get shot. Yeah, I think I don't know if it's some like masculine dilemma, but I do tackle with that. I'm like, am I doing the like I didn't go to medical school. So to me, I'm like, I have to at least balance out that the fact that I could have been a doctor and I'm not doing that. Like I said, I lost a brother to suicide. I do a lot of interviews with veterans who do nonprofits for suicide awareness. I have an OCD mind. I guess I view it as like this karmic balance sheet. I'm like, I got to do more than what I was given. I was given everything.
It should be.
Parents
That's
who
what
are still married, private Catholic school, truly have never known. I've never wanted. I've never gone to bed hungry. I guess in my mind, I guess there's a huge feeling of guilt. And I'm like, I have to, yeah, I have to balance out the karma sheet, and I have to leave it a little better than I found it. And I think it's probably an ego thing to say,
No,
oh, because I didn't serve, it's not real. I'm like, you have to find your own way to serve.
I truly believe, look, military only solves X number of problems. Police only serves X number of problems. Doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, you know. I've said this to other podcasters. I think I said it to you the first time that we met. I said, thank you for what you do, because you are allowing people to listen to the story of Billy Waugh,
Hmm.
a guy who is quintessential American hero. Well, you're the town crier. You're the guy that goes out there and says, "This is what's happening. This is what happened. This is who this person is, or who this person was." So don't, the impact of what you're doing and your patriotism, especially in your age, those are big contributors, because I could see a young guy who's on that fence about United States kind of stinks or whatever, and then they see you and they hear you and they see some of the people that you're bringing on board. They go, well, wait a minute, that's, I'm not used to this. So don't ever be ashamed of what you end up, or feel the less of a person because you're not repelling from buildings, pitching grenades into windows. Very few people do, and very few people survive it. But everybody can make a difference and be proud of what they do. This is, the perfect example is this the stay at home mom.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, well, yeah, she's a stay at home. Are you kidding me?
That's hell.
There's no tougher job in the world
No.
than a stay at home parent, male or female.
Yeah.
You know, it is, so it's, but is that important? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. My dad climbed the corporate ladder and worked 80-hour weeks until he retired like 2 years ago. And he would still joke. He'd be like, I just have to go like beat people over the head and, fight other corporations. He's like, your mom had to raise y'all.
yeah, that's right.
You guys, four boys going through puberty and trying to buck the system. Yeah, you gotta make sure we're at school on time. It's like, good Lord in heaven. God bless. No, my mom, yeah, insane. Yeah. Yeah, that stay-at-home mom. Yeah, God bless. I'd rather storm Omaha Beach than be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, good Lord. At least kill me and get the pain over with instead of having a bunch of kids screaming at me. Mr. Prado, we're coming up on an hour. I said let you go. I know you gotta go pack for your trip. Guys, if you wanna read more about him, please go in the description, get the audiobook or buy the physical copy. I listen to it on Audible. You can listen to our last podcast. His book's called Black Ops, and I think your website is in there as well. Mr. Prado, thank you for your time. I know I'm an oddball. Thank you for listening to my unhinged rants, and I try to tie it all back in a bow. It doesn't always work, but
Well,
thank
I thank you for helping me highlight Billy. That's the goal of many of us right now. There's a lot of people out there trying to showcase so he's not forgotten. He
yes,
deserves
sir.
not to be forgotten.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Prado, author, Black Ops specialist. As you can tell, he's also a therapist. He will sit here and nod. I don't know what he's thinking internally. This kid's fucking nuts, but you know what? He sits through it like a gentleman and smiles. Thank you so much, Mr. Prado. I'll email you this episode when it's up. Can't wait to talk to you again. And thank you for helping illuminate Mr. Billy Waugh's life. Mr. Prado, God bless. God
God
bless
bless.
America. Thank you so much, everybody.